You are listening to Practical and Woo by Mindset and Manifest. My name is Eden, and I invite you to embark on a journey with me to explore the practical and spiritual edges of the unknown for the purpose of allowing you to embody and empower yourself uniquely as you are and to intentionally create and live a life of freedom and fulfillment. Each week, I am going to discuss topics such as energetics, reality creation, manifestation, astrology, tarot, and more to help empower you to live beyond perceived limitations and to practically design your life so it feels like absolute magic every step of the way. Let's dive in. Well, hello, brilliant soul. Beauty is something I have always been mesmerized by. And if I'm being completely honest and transparent with you, also a little threatened by. I remember religiously reading Cosmo magazine and watching Victoria's Secret fashion shows, subtly judging myself and my form against those that were presented before me. The feeling of beauty often evading me, the desire for it, a desperate urge to draw it out in myself, a question taunting me on numerous occasions. Well, what even is beauty? And how can I feel it? How can I be beautiful? Whenever I improved on one part of myself, I intensely focused upon another. And another one would pop up, and then another one. And my fixing and nitpicking never was complete. Not to mention the ever-changing landscape of externally focused beauty standards. It's like playing a perpetual game of whack-a-mole with no winning in sight. The other night, I had a dream, and while it was vivid in the moment, the only details I am left with now is the clarity around a question I've contemplated for so long. There are two faces of beauty. One superficial and cold, like an inanimate vessel that doesn't create magic in its wake. And then there is true beauty, the kind that lights up a room or crashes waves along a shoreline. And in this dream, I learned that the first kind of beauty, while still pleasurable to desire, is meaningless without the second kind, and in fact, can be born from the second kind. Today, I want to present to you a descriptive story episode, one that feels personal and is poetic, familiar yet provocative. I want to tell you a story that whispers to the parts of you that may have spent years under fluorescent lights, staring at reflections that never quite seem to love you back. A story that stretches beyond mirrors and makeup and into something truer, deeper, and infinitely more radiant. So, let's dive in. Once upon a not-so-distant memory, there lived a young woman named Astrid. Astrid was the kind of beautiful that turned heads. Her eyes caught light like the rarest of gems. Her skin seemed to glow with moonlight. She was sculpted, precise, and always adorned. And she had worked hard, so very hard, to get there. She knew every contour of her face, knew the angles that played well on camera, knew the dance of mascara and blush like it was an ancient ritual she committed to herself daily. Her bathroom counter was an altar of serums, creams, and palettes, each bottle a promise, each swipe a spell. And yet, she felt hollow inside. Because no matter how many compliments she collected like coins in a jar, no matter how many likes came in on her filtered photographs, there was a quiet grief beneath the glamour, a loneliness she couldn't name. It wasn't that she was pretending. She genuinely loved the art of beauty, the way color could bloom across her cheek like a sunrise, the way texture and shape could tell a story that could not be summoned by words. But somewhere along the way, she had mistaken the vessel for the source and the image for the essence. She had made herself into a vision, but she no longer knew how to be a presence. One evening, after a long day of existing in curated perfection, Astrid found herself wandering through an old bookstore near her apartment. The kind of bookstore that was always filled with dust in the air and had crooked lamps and armchairs that held the shape of thousands of visitors. She wasn't necessarily looking for anything in particular, but there was a book that swiftly caught her eye. It was bound in leather and had no title. She opened it, and on the first page, handwritten in fading ink, it read, "True beauty cannot be seen with the eyes alone. It is felt. It is known. It is remembered." She kept reading. Each page was filled with letters from strangers to themselves, notes of apology, forgiveness, and awe, stories of becoming, stories of being broken open, stories of seeing beauty not as a mask that is worn, but as a light that is lived. And something cracked open inside of her in that moment. It was small at first, like the faintest beam of a morning sun after a stormy night, but it was real. Astrid took the book home with her, and over the coming days, she began to experiment. Not with concealer, not with contouring, but with her presence. At first, it felt excruciating. She lit candles and tried to look at herself in the mirror, not to criticize, not to fix, not to assess, but simply to see. And yet her eyes kept darting to every flaw in her mind, the ones that she memorized. It felt foreign, even foolish at times, to try loving the very skin that she'd spent years dissecting. And still she returned to the mirror again the next night, and the next, and the one after that. She wrote letters to her body with trembling hands, not because she believed the words, but because there was some quiet part of her who was willing to try. Some days the words came out angry. Other days they were grief-soaked apologies. She danced in the dark with no one watching, but even then shame would cling to her limbs like static. Movement felt mechanical at first, and then there was this one evening. She forgot to care how she looked, and she simply moved. She cried in the bath, unsure of whether it was a release or collapse, but she let the tears fall anyway, giving permission for the water to hold her when she didn't know how to hold herself. And one day, she put on her grandmother's sweater instead of the usual flattering fit. It didn't shape her body in the way she'd been taught was beautiful, but it wrapped her in memory, in softness, in a truth older than fashion. And slowly, achingly, miraculously, the shell she had built over years had begun to soften. The armor, once so necessary, began to melt away. She didn't just look beautiful, she felt beautiful. And this time it wasn't a fragile beauty, it was real. Not because of how she looked, but because of how she was choosing to live. There are two faces of beauty. One is the face we're sold, the one that keeps changing its standards just enough to keep us chasing. It's often silent, smiling, symmetrical. It seeks approval. It craves control. It's a perfectly iced cake with no substance inside, like an inedible cardboard we might not even know is underneath unless we are willing to cut into it and take a bite. The other is the face we find. It's unrepeatable, it's wild and divine. It may have laugh lines, it may have scars, it may defy fashion. It may not photograph well in conventional ways, but it glows. It is the beauty of someone laughing from their toes, of someone holding eye contact without fear, of someone who makes you feel safe and seen, inspired just by standing in their truth. This beauty cannot be bought. It cannot really even be taught. It cannot be stolen. It cannot be filtered, and yet it gets to be yours. Astrid began to notice something. The more she lived in her presence, the more beautiful the world became around her. The tree outside her window, crooked and imperfect, looked like poetry. Her friend's gap-toothed grin was a constellation in and of itself. The stranger crying quietly in the park was a portrait of honesty, a beautiful sadness. She realized the eyes we see the world with are the same eyes we see ourselves with. And when we clean the lens of judgment and expectation, then beauty blooms everywhere you look, like wildflowers on a perfect summer day. Even in the shadows, even in the ache, even in the places we were told to hide. So let me ask you now, what does beauty feel like in your body? Not based on what it looks like, not what gets praised, but what sensation arises when you know you are connected, alive, and aligned to everything you are? Whatever it is, that's your true face of beauty. And it's here, right now, always, dancing in your presence. You don't have to abandon aesthetics. This isn't a war between looking good and liberation. This is simply a return to the essence underneath it all. So wear the jeans that makes your bum look nice, style your hair, take joy in the physical. But don't forget that your beauty doesn't come from these things. Your beauty infuses these things because it was never about looking a certain way. It was always about loving in a certain way. I hope Astrid's story met you where you needed it. Maybe you saw yourself in her striving. Maybe you're having your own bookstore moment. Or maybe you're already dancing in the dark. Wherever you are, I want you to know that your beauty is not and never has been a project, nor should it be. It's a presence. And when you return to it, the whole world shifts around you and meets you. Not because you become more palatable, but because you become more like yourself, your truest self, in your true beauty. Nothing is more glamorous and magnificent and mesmerizing than someone who is unafraid to be really themselves. And if you're still working on this, navigating it, or processing, don't worry, because so am I. Together, we shall let our radiance rise and know that beauty was never something that we had to earn. It was always something we already were all along. Until next time.